Tom Pelissero is back here on the program. Good to see you, Tommy P. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Rich. What's up to my boys in studio?
Tommy P.
Hey, Tom.
What's
Tommy
up,
P.
baby? Looking great.
I heard you talking about Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yes, sir.
And it is one of my favorite draft stories.
Please.
Because one thing that I try to do every year is just talk to coaches, GMs, scouts, and go through a bunch of different positions. Obviously, I focus in heavily on the quarterbacks, but just to kind of get a feel, who are those guys that everybody loves, or the ones that are in every mock draft and teams don't actually like them? Jahmyr Gibbs was the number one guy when I talked to coaches going into that draft. Everyone was like, "Oh, he's unbelievable! Like that's the guy that I would want." The Lions take him after trading down from number 6 to number 12 in that draft. And people lost their minds of, why are you taking a running back at number 12? I was told the next morning they were going to take him at 6. If they hadn't traded down, they were just going to stand in and take him at 6. I reported that. And if you go back to that tweet and the responses to it, the world was mocking the Lions for making that pick. Fair to say, they were not alone in valuing Jahmyr Gibbs that high, and every time that he takes the field, he shows you why they regarded him the way they did.
Well, and I just heard coming out of that draft that 12 was almost not high enough for him, that teams were ready to jump the line for the Lions, for Jahmyr Gibbs, including the Jets, who had Breece Hall coming off of his rookie season. I heard that too, Tom.
Well, and one thing that the Lions have done, and in the great days of the Patriots, they were good at this as well, was essentially you don't grade players and draft them off what the grade is for the league. You figure out, what is this guy going to do for us? Just like Jack Campbell, who a lot of people had as a second round pick because, he's an Iowa linebacker, he doesn't run all that great, what are you going to do with him on third downs? The Lions go, he's a perfect fit for what we want to do. We don't care where you have him graded. I think they took him at like 18. We're just going to stand in and take the guy. There's risk factors involved with that because over time, there are teams that place such an emphasis on the value that you're constantly, all right, we need additional bites at the apple. And that's why you trade down and you get guys. But the Lions have been very consistent with, that's our guy. We're going to go and do what it takes to get him. They did it with Jamison Williams too, trading up with the Vikings in that draft. And while Jamo has had a bumpy career to this point, you watch him on a good night and you see the freaky things he can do, and you know exactly why they felt that he was a perfect fit for what they want to do as well.
But Brian Branch is out for the season, right? We determined that?
Yeah. Brian Branch, torn Achilles. He's going to undergo surgery, out for the season. You would hope that by the start of the 2026 season, he's back. That is, the start of training camp is, 8 months or so away. So he's probably going to be limited. You'd hope by the early portion of next season he's back. But that's another big blow, Rich. As much as this was a huge win for the Lions, they were the most injured team last year. And you look at them right now, especially in the secondary, and once again, they're kind of, a series of spare parts. They had just gotten DJ Reed back. They lose Terrion Arnold, who had tried to play through that shoulder injury. I mean, he was told 2 months ago, this is probably season ending, got a second opinion, decided to push it. It just got to a point where he had to have shoulder surgery that if it hasn't already happened, it's happening in the next couple of days here. Kirby Joseph hasn't played since week 6. Because of a knee injury. And now Brian Branch, who's one of the versatile pieces in the secondary of any NFL team, is out for the season as well. That's a lot to take on. I mean, we're past the trade deadline here. There aren't just players available that you can go get. So once again, Kelvin Shepard and that staff in Detroit is just going to have to go, all right, as much as next man up becomes a cliche, that's very much what it is at this time of year. And we'll see whether some of those other younger players are able to sustain this thing for a Lions team that's right in the playoff mix.
And then amazing how things can turn in the NFL. I mean, we see it every single year. We see it every single week. Dallas is now 6-6-1 with 4 games to go. And it's going to be a very steep hill for them to climb now after their first loss in a month. And George Pickens goes from the Cowboys have no choice but to re-sign him. And then Richard Sherman giving voice on the post-game show last night to what a lot of people were observing during the game is, and what maybe some people in Pittsburgh were sort of Rick Dalton from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood jiffing, like pointing at the screen that's right there. He didn't try for a ball that could have lost in the lights, or he wasn't running crisp routes. Richard Sherman was pointing out that Pickens was giving the Cowboys maybe, or should, thoughts about why would we want to give him $40 million a year? What are you hearing coming out of the Cowboys loss about that or anything else, Tom?
Well, certainly. I mean, George Pickens is a very rare talent physically, but there's a reason that he wasn't even a first round pick. And it was the same things at Georgia that you saw in parts in Pittsburgh, and that, perhaps, and I'm not, inside that locker room in Dallas, but perhaps you saw some of those parts come up yesterday in terms of some of the, the mistakes that are made on the field. I've got no question that George Pickens is going to get a boatload of money. It might come in the form of a franchise tag in 2026. But you're right. I mean, people can look at the Steelers and go, well, why'd they, give that guy away for a third round pick? Well, number one, they just acquired DK Metcalf, and you were probably not going to have those two guys together in the same receiver room. Number two, Aaron Rodgers really values guys who he knows exactly where they're going to be on the field. Pickens' style, his play style may not be a great fit with Rodgers. And then the other part of it is this is kind of how the Steelers, Rich, have operated for a long time at wide receiver. And Mike Tomlin deserves a lot of credit for the way that he has, let's say, managed different personalities over the years at that position. But think of the number of Steelers wide receivers who they have traded away through the years, whether that was going into a second contract or while on a second contract. It's Antonio Brown. It's Martavis Bryant. It is Chase Claypool. It's Deontay Johnson. There's a long history of them taking on various personalities, getting everything they can out of them, and then moving on from them before they actually have to make a large commitment or another large commitment in terms of the contract. Again, George Pickens is going to be fine. He is too talented. This is not a wide receiver group in free agency that anybody's looking at and licking their chops to go out and pay some of these other guys $35 million per year. But it certainly is going to, weigh into the broader calculus here of, what's the commitment level. It's always seemed like the most logical outcome of this is a franchise tag for George Pickens, but we'll find out in February, March exactly what direction
Tom
it goes.
Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Tommy P, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, things are happening that let's just say it's reached a pitch that we've rarely seen in Pittsburgh, certainly when it comes to Mike Tomlin, despite a lot of voices from the fan base. It feels different. It just does with a month to go. What are you hearing about that situation, if you will, going into the first of two big-time games against the Ravens between these two teams?
Start right there. They're tied for first place in the AFC North. Yes. I know they've lost, 5 of their last 7
Correct.
here, but they still got 2 matchups with the team that they're tied with. Let's see how these next 5 weeks go before thinking about, what the broader picture is going to be. But to that extent, there's a lot of different things that go into this with Mike Tomlin. And frankly, I would say this is 5 Decembers in a row that we've had some level of, whether it's reports or speculation. We haven't had, the fire Tomlin chants and things like that. But certainly the impressions and the feelings about Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh seem like they have always been, not aligned with the views of Mike Tomlin nationally. I mean, he's obviously got the streak of never finishing below 500. He's also a guy who hasn't won a playoff game since the Obama administration. I certainly understand where that plays into some of the frustration. You look at the number of different swings. I mean, think of the number of different quarterbacks that have started a game for Pittsburgh since Ben Roethlisberger's retirement. They took their swing on Kenny Pickett. That was not a strong draft class. If there was one guy who they were going to take, it was Pickett. For a variety of reasons, it didn't work out. And then you've got, Mason Rudolph that's in there, and you take your shot last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and now it's Aaron Rodgers. You're trying different things, but you haven't used that high type of draft capital to go and get a quarterback, and it's not for a lack of trying, nor have they swung a big trade to acquire someone like they could have if, ultimately, for instance, the Rams had decided to move on from Matthew Stafford in the last offseason. What I would tell you, Rich, is based on everything I know, and this is in part from a conversation I had last summer with Art Rooney, where I asked him, what goes into deciding to stick with a head coach for as long as the Steelers have, not just with Mike Tomlin, but in prior cases as well. And Art's philosophy on this is, as long as you believe in the coach and the coach still has the locker room, there's not a reason to make a change. I don't see signs right now that Mike Tomlin has lost the locker room in Pittsburgh. I don't see any reason to believe that Art Rooney is going to do something that the Steelers never do and fire Mike Tomlin. in terms of whether there could be, for instance, a trade, whether Mike Tomlin could want to go someplace else. That's a conversation that Mike would have to initiate with the organization. He's one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL. He's got 2 years left on his deal. There were certainly teams last year, including the Bears, who would have had some level of interest. It just didn't line up. I mean, what job out there is Mike Tomlin going to look at and say it can be better than what he's got in Pittsburgh?
Giants,
he's got a lot of authority.
Giants, I'll just jump in. Giants. You got Jackson Dart, you got that front seven, you got Malik Neighbors, you got Cam Scatterbo, you got a fan base that's dying for him. Truly every Giant fan I know. And I know this is stirring it up. This is speculation because you're right.
No,
there's two big fat Steeler-Ravens games that can change all of this. The tenor can change, but you can also read some tea leaves. You can also use your own two eyes as to what this team's going to do if they have the ability to, to get something going. Anything can happen, clearly. But Giants, and honestly, and if I'm any head coach, forget just Tomlin, and I feel like my situation's not that great. College or pros, that's not a bad job right there, Tom, at all.
I agree. The Giants job has plenty of things going for it, but you're also, Mike Tomlin has seemingly infinite job security in Pittsburgh. He has a lot of authority over the roster. He's out in the scouting process, involved in those things. He's got a pretty good setup in Pittsburgh. So again, this is not, I don't anticipate, and you never say never, but I don't anticipate Art Rooney is going to come to a conclusion that the Mike Tomlin era has run its course. If Mike Tomlin comes to the conclusion that the Mike Tomlin era has run its course in Pittsburgh, now it would be interesting to see exactly how this would play out. There's not a lot of occasions in recent NFL history of executing a trade. Even the Sean Payton trade was different because it was a year later and they already had a head coach in Dennis Allen. Sean wasn't going to try to come back and get that job back. He wanted to be traded, but it's far different than, the timeline even in terms of trading a head coach after the season and then potentially putting yourself behind in terms of the interview process. It's not impossible, but that's a decision and a path that Mike Tomlin would have to want to go down for the Steelers to go down it.
I've got Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Jacoby Brissett is going to be starting for the Arizona Cardinals against the Rams this weekend and for the Arizona Cardinals for the rest of the season, as Jonathan Gannon, prior to you stepping into our Zoom room, stepped to the podium and said that the injury for Murray is, quote-unquote, not progressing where it's going to make sense that he can go, and ruled him out for the rest of the season. Is he done in Arizona, Tom? I think it's a fair question to ask. Certainly, based on his cryptic comment about potentially not being around when the new facilities open up in 2 years, that caused a lot of eyebrows to raise before he got hurt. What do you got for me on that front, Tom?
Well, the Cardinals have a lot of things that they've got to figure out. They've lost, I believe, 9 of their last 10 games. You're in year 3 of the program. You'd like to think by this point you've learned to win more than the Cardinals seem to have learned how to win. They're in every game. Jonathan Gannon and his staff, they're all a bunch of young guys. They're bright coaches who all have big futures in this league. This has been a bumpy season for a lot of reasons. They've had a ton of injuries. And Kyler Murray, quite frankly, was never their quarterback. Now, when Jonathan Gannon got there, he threw everything he had behind Kyler Murray and has been a big backer of him. And Drew Petzing and the offensive staff, same thing. They also didn't have a choice. Kyler Murray's contract, which of course at the time was a heavy focus of media members and fans because of the infamous homework clause that once that was revealed ended up getting stripped out. It's also a remarkable document in terms of how long out the guarantees have flowed. He still has, in 2026, almost $40 million fully guaranteed, and another almost $20 million becomes fully guaranteed if Kyler is still on the roster as of March 15th. It would be unlike Arizona to simply say we're going to eat $40 million cash and release him. Is it possible that they could pay it down prior to that additional $20 million vesting for somebody who wants Kyler Murray as a bridge quarterback? Would another team be willing to take on $60 million of guaranteed money for Kyler Murray? Those are some of the moving parts, all of which is a way of saying, I think by any logical measure here, Rich, you'd say Kyler Murray is probably going to be someplace else in 2026. again, it would be assuming that things remain static there with Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort, which I'm not assuming because again, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. But if they are, you'd like to think, all right, this is going to be the opportunity to go and get your quarterback. Maybe that's Jacoby Brissett, who leads in every category, it seems like, since he took over as a backup quarterback, while, by the way, playing with fourth and fifth string running backs. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been in and out of the lineup. They've had other injuries at wide receiver. I mean, there's been a lot of different challenges that they've had here. But the contract is going to be a piece of this, just like it is with Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. It's kind of a similar type of a calculus here, which is, all right, can we pay it down and trade him to somebody who needs a bridge quarterback? All right, but then if you pay it down for the bridge quarterback, now you've got to pay to get your own bridge quarterback in. Arizona has that answered, hypothetically, because Jacoby Brissett's under contract for 2026. But this is part of what's going to be, I believe, Rich, a really, really busy and fascinating quarterback carousel as we get not even into March, but these things tend to start, rolling out as we get through January and towards Super Bowl week.
Before I let you go, open the notebook on who's in, who's out injury wise. Starting with Tee Higgins, what do you got for me here? Is he going to be available for Joe Burrow come Sunday in Western New York?
Tee Higgins is back for Cincinnati, cleared the concussion protocol. They're still 2 games back. They still have a winning record in the division. Mm-hmm. They're not completely out of it here, and this will be the first time that we've seen Joe Burrow with his full complements of receivers since the very beginning of this season. So that's big for them. The Commanders at this point are essentially buried in terms of the playoff calculation, but Dan Quinn, right before we came on air, announced Jayden Daniels has cleared he'd been cleared by doctors for contact with that dislocated left elbow, so he's going to be out there on Sunday. The Commanders are not waving the white flag just yet. They're going to go up against the Minnesota team that we don't have a formal announcement yet from Kevin O'Connell, but I fully anticipate JJ McCarthy is going to be out there and starting for the Vikings on Sunday, which again, when we're talking about all these moving parts in the offseason, the Vikings are a team that's got big-time decisions to make in terms of the quarterback position as well. Justin Herbert seems to be trending the correct direction, was limited in practice yesterday. The big thing, was 4 days ago that he had surgery on his left hand to stabilize a fracture. But it seems like his full intention is just they got to get the swelling out. That's the biggest thing. He wore the glove on it after the injury occurred last week. But, if anybody's going to play with that type of an injury, it's a guy who also, had a high ankle sprain. I think it was last year, had about 5 rolls of tape on it and somehow was out there playing through it. That's just Justin Herbert's mentality. It's one of the many reasons that Jim Harbaugh loves him.
So I know this is more than maybe a minute and a half, but that's all I've got. Is Lamar healthy? What's going on? Because he's not practicing fully all week. We know that might be the way for the rest of the season. Is there something up? We don't know because he just hasn't looked the same since coming back.
Short answer is no, he's not healthy. He's been on the injury report virtually the entire season. It was a hamstring that sidelined him for several games. He didn't come back quite as quickly as they were hoping on that. Then he pops up on the report with a knee injury, and then the following week gets an ankle. The reason he didn't practice yesterday, from my understanding, and I know Ian Rappaport put this out earlier, is he got stepped on. It was not like a major type of a thing. But you watch him play, and I'm not, going to profess to be an expert of the quarterback position, but he doesn't look quite the same. There was a next-gen stat that came out that Lamar has forced 0 missed tackles on designed runs this season. What's Lamar Jackson's calling card? It's the run ability, and it's not just the design stuff, but the scrambling stuff. We all know some of those stats about he's has the highest passer rating or one of the highest passer ratings of anybody in NFL history. A big part of that is driven by he sees different looks on the back end because everyone is scared of him running. When you lose the Lamar run threat, even though he's still a threat, but if you lose that absolute elite elusiveness, it has a trickle-down effect on how defenses play him here. We'll see, can he get healthier as this season goes on? There have been a bunch of seasons where we've seen Lamar kind of get, worn down a little bit here. I've got no question that he's, pending the final injury report, that he's going to be raring to go. He was back on the practice field today. But, both the injury report and my eyes would tell me this is not quite 100% Lamar Jackson as they get set to go up against a Steelers defense that's got pretty much everything on the line this week.
You the man, brother. I'll see you Sunday. Game day morning?
Sounds great.
Okay,
I'll be there.
It's Tom Pelissero, everybody, in his usual
Tommy.
Friday spot right here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.